In every hierarchy, silence is a weapon. Those who understand timing and restraint control the narrative without entering it. This episode reveals how influence operates through absence, why saying less in negotiations, markets, and meetings amplifies control. Money listens to composure. Power begins where reaction ends. The loud make noise. The rich make moves. This is the paradox most people never question. They assume influence announces itself, that power speaks first, that authority proves its presence through volume, visibility, and constant assertion. But in every real hierarchy, the opposite is true. The more someone needs to speak, the less leverage they usually possess. The more someone explains, justifies, reacts, the more exposed their position becomes. Silence is not emptiness. It is withheld force. In markets, in negotiations, in corporate rooms sealed behind glass and confidentiality agreements, silence functions as currency. It buys time. It creates imbalance. It forces projection. While one side fills the air with words, the other extracts information without giving any away. Most people are never taught this. They are trained instead to perform, to demonstrate value through output, presence, participation. Speak up in meetings, share your ideas, build your personal brand, be visible, be vocal, be responsive. The system praises engagement because engagement is legible. It can be tracked, measured, optimized, redirected. Silence cannot. Silence resists capture. This is why silence feels dangerous to the uninitiated. It looks like absence, like passivity, like weakness. But that is only true inside systems designed to reward compliance rather than control. From childhood onward, people are conditioned to fill gaps, to answer quickly, to justify themselves, to explain intent, to narrate their worth in real time. Pauses are treated as failures, stillness as uncertainty, quiet as lack of confidence. Yet every experienced negotiator knows the opposite. The first to speak after a question often loses ground. The one who breaks silence reveals urgency. The one who reacts confirms vulnerability. Silence shifts gravity. The problem is not that people talk too much. It is that they talk reflexively. Their speech is not strategic. It is emotional discharge. A way to relieve internal pressure, to be seen, to be approved, to regain equilibrium when uncertainty appears. The system exploits this reflex. Corporate environments, especially, are structured to reward reactivity, instant replies, rapid alignment, constant updates. Performance is equated with availability, and availability is equated with loyalty. Silence disrupts that equation. When you pause instead of respond, you introduce friction. When you observe instead of opine, you remove yourself from immediate classification. You stop feeding the machine data about your incentives, fears, and ambitions. And systems hate blind spots. This is why silence is framed as disengagement, as risk, as inefficiency. Why those who do not constantly signal participation are subtly penalized. Because silence interrupts flow, and flow is how control is maintained. Money follows the same logic. In markets, the loudest actors are rarely the most powerful. Retail panic is noisy. Media speculation is noisy. Social sentiment is noisy. But accumulation happens quietly. Positioning happens before narratives. Distribution happens after attention arrives. The crowd sees the headline. Capital already moved weeks earlier. This is not coincidence. It is structure. Those who control capital understand timing, and timing requires patience. Silence is patience made visible only to those who recognize it. The average person believes money rewards activity, but activity is often the byproduct of uncertainty. The wealthy do not rush. because they are not reacting to conditions, they are shaping them. Reaction requires noise. Design requires quiet. This is where misunderstanding begins. People confuse silence with inaction, when in reality silence often precedes the most decisive moves. The pause before acquisition, the quiet before policy change, the absence before a market reprice. When nothing is being said publicly, something is being decided privately. But because the public has been trained to equate information with truth and speech with power, they miss the real signals. They watch the loudest voices instead of the quiet shifts. They follow sentiment instead of structure. And so, they are always late. Silence also functions as insulation. Those who speak less expose less. Every word reveals positioning. Every opinion signals alignment. Every reaction creates a record. In a world governed by memory, data logs, transcripts, screenshots, metrics, speech becomes liability. The powerful understand this intuitively. That is why statements are filtered, delayed, lawyered, why executives speak in abstractions, why real decisions are made off record, why silence is often the most accurate indicator that something matters. You are not told this because it runs counter to the mythology of transparency. Transparency is marketed downward. Upward, opacity reigns. The system teaches you to overshare while it withholds. This asymmetry is deliberate. Those lower in hierarchies are encouraged to express, explain, perform authenticity. Their openness fuels analytics. It makes them predictable. Those higher up protect ambiguity. They release information selectively. They allow others to speculate. Speculation works in their favor. Silence creates projection. When you say nothing, others fill the gap with their own assumptions, their fears, their hopes, their biases. In doing so, they reveal themselves. They negotiate against ghosts. They concede without pressure. This is why silence unnerves people. It denies them feedback. And without feedback, most people lose composure. Composure is rare because it requires internal stability. Silence forces you to sit with uncertainty without resolving it through expression. That is uncomfortable, but discomfort is where leverage is born. Money listens to composure. Investors are not impressed by excitement. They are impressed by restraint. Markets do not reward certainty. They reward those who can endure ambiguity without flinching. Yet the average participant is trained to react instantly, to comment, to speculate, to broadcast conviction even when none exists. Social platforms accelerate this. Everyone is expected to have a take. Silence is interpreted as ignorance, but in reality, silence often means the opposite. The person is still gathering information, or they already know something that makes speaking unnecessary. The post-Stoic understands this. He treats speech as a tool, not a reflex. He speaks when words alter structure, not when they relieve emotion. He understands that power is not in being heard, but in being able to remain unheard without consequence. This is the beginning of real control. Not domination, not intimidation, but self-regulation. Machiavelli warned rulers about appearing too eager. Urgency exposes dependence. Dependence invites exploitation. Silence, by contrast, suggests optionality, and optionality is the foundation of leverage. When you can wait, you win. Most people cannot wait. Their lives are built on immediacy. Bills, notifications, deadlines, approval loops. Their nervous systems are conditioned for response. Silence feels like risk because their stability depends on constant engagement. This is why silence is inaccessible to many. It requires margin, psychological, temporal, financial margin. Without margin, quiet feels like falling behind. The system ensures most people operate without margin, but the strategist builds it deliberately. He reduces noise, not to withdraw from the world, but to hear it more clearly. He observes patterns others miss because they are too busy signaling participation. He waits while others chase momentum. He lets narratives exhaust themselves, and when he moves, it looks sudden only to those who weren't watching. This is the currency of silence. It does not inflate. It compounds. In negotiations, silence after an offer often produces a better one. In business, silence after provocation often forces the other side to overcorrect. In markets, silence during hysteria preserves capital. Silence creates asymmetry because it slows time, and control over time is control over outcomes. The illusion is that silence is passive. In truth, it is active restraint. It is effort redirected inward. It is decision deferred until structure reveals itself. Those who master silence are rarely visible at the beginning of shifts. They appear later, positioned perfectly, while others wonder how they saw it coming. They didn't predict. They waited. This is the problem most people never solve. They want certainty before silence, when silence is what allows certainty to form. So they speak, they react, they explain, they commit prematurely. And in doing so, they collapse their own optionality. The system rewards this behavior because it makes outcomes easier to manage. Predictable people are governable. Loud people are traceable. Reactive people are steerable. Silent people are not. And that is why silence is quietly discouraged, even as it is publicly praised. Think before you speak, they say, but only if your silence does not disrupt flow. Only if it does not slow decisions. Only if it does not challenge incentives. True silence does all three. It interrupts, it delays, it destabilizes assumptions, which is exactly why it works. This is not about becoming mute. It is about becoming selective, about understanding that every word is a cost, that speech spends something, attention, positioning, leverage, and like any currency, it must be deployed where return justifies expense. Most people overspend their words and wonder why they feel powerless. Silence is the correction. In the second half, the architecture becomes clear. How institutions weaponize noise, how markets punish those who react publicly and reward those who move privately, how composure translates into capital and restraint into authority. Because once you understand how silence operates, you stop trying to be heard, and you start designing outcomes instead. Once you understand that silence alters balance, you begin to notice how aggressively modern systems work to eliminate it. Every platform is engineered to extract response. Notifications demand acknowledgement. Timelines reward immediacy. Metrics punish delay. Silence is treated as absence of value, because value, in this architecture, is defined by interaction. Interaction feeds data. Data feeds prediction. Prediction feeds control. Silence breaks that chain. This is why modern power structures are loud on the surface and quiet at the core. Public-facing layers are saturated with commentary, explanation, reassurance, outrage, enthusiasm. Behind them, decisions are compressed into small rooms, private channels, unrecorded pauses. The more consequential the decision, the fewer people are allowed to speak. Markets follow the same pattern. The loudest moments are rarely the most important. Earnings calls, press releases, analyst debates, these are theater. Real positioning occurs before and after, in the quiet intervals where capital reallocates without announcement. Those who wait for confirmation hear echoes. Those who act in silence move first. The average participant mistakes information for advantage. They believe knowing more headlines equals being ahead. But headlines are not signals. They are residues. By the time something is loud enough to trend, it has already been priced, absorbed, diluted. Silence is where signals live before they become noise. This is why seasoned operators rarely explain their moves. Explanation invites scrutiny. Scrutiny invites interference. Silence preserves freedom of motion. It allows repositioning without resistance. You see this in acquisitions announced after completion, in policy shifts revealed only once implementation is inevitable, in investors who never justify exits publicly, in executives who disappear briefly and return transformed. Silence is not secrecy for its own sake. It is insulation against premature reaction. Reaction is costly. When you react publicly, you anchor yourself. You reveal priorities. You invite countermoves. Silence keeps options alive. It allows adjustment without loss of face. Face matters because identity is leverage. Once you are known for a position, changing it becomes expensive. Silence delays identity crystallization. It keeps you fluid. This is why the most powerful individuals often appear vague. They speak in ranges, not commitments. They reference process instead of outcomes. They say less than expected. This frustrates those who seek certainty, but certainty is a liability in dynamic systems. The post-Stoic strategist accepts uncertainty as permanent. He does not seek to resolve it through speech. He holds it, observes it, lets it inform timing. This is not indecision. It is discipline. Discipline to resist the urge to signal intelligence. Discipline to let others overextend. Discipline to remain unreadable. Unreadability is a form of power. In corporate environments, silence can reframe hierarchy. The person who speaks least but whose words end discussions carries more weight than the one who fills every meeting. Authority accumulates around those whose silence implies optionality, the sense that they are not dependent on immediate approval. Dependence speaks. Independence waits. This is why those climbing hierarchies are encouraged to be vocal, while those at the top are permitted to be sparse. Voice is used as proof of engagement until engagement is no longer required. Silence marks the transition. Money responds the same way. Capital prefers calm. It avoids volatility not because volatility lacks opportunity, but because volatility exposes emotion. Emotional actors are predictable. Predictability is exploitable, but it is also crowded. Quiet actors move differently. They do not broadcast intent. They do not chase confirmation. They let conditions mature. This is why composure attracts capital, not charisma, not confidence displays, but the absence of urgency, the ability to sit through uncertainty without altering posture. Silence signals that you are not overexposed. The system trains people to fill every gap because gaps create anxiety. Anxiety drives engagement. Engagement drives consumption. Silence interrupts that loop. It allows perspective to form. Perspective reduces impulse. Impulse is profitable. Restraint is not, at least not for those who sell reactions, which is why restraint is quietly marginalized. Yet history favors the restrained. Empires are not built by constant proclamation. They are built by logistics, patience, and timing. The loudest voices are often the first to fall because they have no room left to maneuver. Silence preserves maneuverability. The shift, then, is internal before it is external. You stop treating silence as absence and begin treating it as position. You choose when to speak based on structural impact, not emotional release. You stop narrating your process. You let outcomes speak instead. You become comfortable letting others misunderstand you temporarily. Misunderstanding creates space. Space allows movement. This is difficult because the modern world equates misunderstanding with failure. But in reality, being fully understood by everyone usually means you are operating well within the system's expectations. Those who change structures are rarely understood in real time. Silence also recalibrates your relationship with ego. When you do not need to be heard, you regain control over self-image. You stop outsourcing validation. You stop competing for attention. Attention is volatile. It comes with strings. Silence frees you from those exchanges. This does not mean withdrawal. It means precision. You speak when speech compounds. You remain quiet when noise would dilute position. Over time, this creates a different kind of presence. People listen more closely because words are rare. Decisions carry weight because they are not rehearsed publicly. Movement feels intentional rather than reactive. The system senses this and adjusts. Those who cannot be rushed are negotiated with differently. Those who do not react are provoked less. Those who do not overshare are harder to manage. This is the quiet leverage silence provides. At the highest levels, power often manifests as the ability to delay. Delay approval, delay response, delay disclosure, delay commitment. Each delay shifts leverage toward the one who can afford to wait. Waiting requires margin. And margin is the true objective. Financial margin, psychological margin, temporal margin. Silence is how you protect margin. The final realization is simple but unsettling. Most people are loud because they are afraid. Afraid of being ignored. Afraid of missing out. Afraid of falling behind. The system amplifies these fears because they generate motion. But power does not need to move constantly. It only needs to move decisively. So you begin to cultivate stillness, not as an aesthetic, as a strategy. You slow responses. You reduce exposure. You listen longer than feels comfortable. You let others reveal urgency while you preserve calm. And gradually, something shifts. You are no longer pulled into every cycle. You are no longer required to comment on every fluctuation. You are no longer spending energy proving relevance. Relevance comes to you because in every hierarchy, those who control pace control outcome. Those who control outcome do not need to announce it. They operate in silence. This is the currency few recognize because it cannot be displayed. It does not trend. It does not perform well in public metrics. But it compounds quietly. And when you finally see it, you understand why the loud are always busy and the powerful are rarely rushed. Money listens to composure. Power begins where reaction ends. This is the currency of silence.